Welcome to Unit 9. Today we finish modal logic. We do two more arguments. The second one is one of my absolute favorite ones, and it's about divine foreknowledge and human freedom, and it shows the real usefulness of modal logic in dealing with important philosophical arguments. And then we'll go further into informal fallacies. The next one, Unit 10, we'll finish informal fallacies. Then 11 is a review and preparation for the final. And then Unit 12 is a final exam. And then we are done. Okay. Now, before doing this current Unit 9, I suggest you do the last two modal arguments and 15 of the fallacies, and at least start on logical set R. Our first argument here is from an area called Philosophy of Mind, and it's on what it is to do something on purpose. What does it mean if you do something on purpose? Well, one idea that pops into our mind is that perhaps to do something on purpose means that you have a prior purposeful decision to do the thing. But there's a problem with that, since then that prior purposeful decision would presumably require a previous one, and that would require a previous one, etc., etc., etc. So you get an infinite chain of previous decisions to decide, which is impossible. And so this entailment doesn't work. I did that on purpose. It's consistent with I didn't make a prior purposeful decision to do that, which is perhaps somewhat surprising. What is it to make to do something on purpose? Well, I think you have to read Gilbert Ryle to find out about that. In any case, this is valid. How does the argument work? Block off the conclusion. Assume not possible D and not P. Therefore, reversing squiggle necessarily not D and not P. Then what do? Well, you could reverse the squiggle in the second line too, and say necessary not I. Now, can we do anything? Well, the first step is an if-then. Do we have the second part false? Almost. We don't have a line that says not I, and so strictly according to our rules, we'd make another assumption. But the thing is, it's so simple to violate the strategy rules a little bit. Necessary not I, therefore not I in the actual world, and then you can use it up here and get not necessary D implies P, and you get possible not D implies P, and then reverse, put that in the world. W not D implies P. False if then, therefore first part true, second part false, and then you drop this necessary thing in the same world. You have W not both D and not P, and then they're not both true. The first is, so the second is not, so you get W, therefore P. Contradiction, therefore valid, possible D and not P. And there you go. Okay, 14 is the last modal argument we'll do from the book, and it's on a very famous controversy, the divine foreknowledge human freedom argument. Let's say you do something. Let's say you put an X on the blackboard. Okay. Let's say that there is a God, and he knows everything, including future events that haven't happened. So if you put the X on the blackboard, God knew from all eternity that you were going to do it. But then seemingly you had to do it. If he knew from all eternity that you would do it, you had to do it. Your doing it was necessary and thus not free. And so it seems that if God knows what you're going to do before you do it, then you can't be free. That's the argument. And here it is spelled out more fully. Now, there's three different attitudes toward the argument. One is we should reject human freedom, as did Martin Luther, for example. He didn't like free will. That was mostly for theological reasons, which we won't get into, but he did use this argument too. God knows what we're going to do before we do it, and so we can't be free. He didn't like free will. Another attitude, and that's from Charles Hartshorn. He was the one that did that kind of weird argument that we did last time about necessary being. He says we should reject divine foreknowledge. He says that we are free, and so God doesn't know what we're going to do. There's two ways you can reason with an if-then. Affirm the first or deny the second. So if you have this if-then, if God knows what you're going to do before you do it, then we aren't free. You could say God does know, therefore we're not free. Or you could say we are free, therefore God doesn't know what we're going to do. And that's the view of Charles Hartshorn. It's also the view of God himself. Now, how do I, a mere philosophy teacher, know what the view of God himself is on this? Well, the answer is I saw the movie, Oh God, starring George Burns, who at that time was about 100 years old, almost as old as God, even older than I. And George Burns plays God on Earth, and people ask him questions. And one thing that they ask him is how we can be free if he knows what we're going to do before we do it. And here's the little video clip.
Is it going to get any worse?
How should I know?
What do you mean, how should you know?
How could I know?
Well, you know everything.
I only know what is. Also, I'm very big on what was. On what isn't yet, I haven't got a clue.
Well, when you said...
Move your foot.
Oh.
Sit down.
When you said that everything was going to work out, I thought you could tell the future.
Absolutely, I could tell the future. The minute it becomes the past. I said everything could work out, if that's everybody's choice. People have to decide on their own what's to be done with the world.
So, according to God himself, at least as portrayed in Hollywood in the movie, God doesn't know what we're going to do before we do it, and that protects our free will. But there's a third attitude toward the argument, and that is that there's a flaw in the argument. Yeah, it's just, what is the flaw? Well, you can kind of guess. It's the box inside, box outside ambiguity. And a lot of medieval thinkers believe this, that there's a flaw, Boethius, Aquinas, and Occam, and I would hold that too, and a lot of people today. What's the problem? This is an if-then. It's an ambiguous if-then. If God knew that you would do it, then it was necessary that you do it. Could mean two very different things. The crucial problem with the argument is the ambiguity of the second premise. If God knew that you would do it, then it was necessary that you would do it. This could mean box outside or box inside. If you do box outside, then the premise is undoubtedly true. It's necessarily true that if God knows what you're going to do, then you'll do it. Or put differently, in every possible world, if God knows in that world that you will do it, then you will do it in that world, or else he wouldn't know. But does it follow that you do it in every possible world? Nah. This way, it comes out invalid. We will see. Because maybe in another possible world you don't do it, and he knows that you won't do it. So you doing it is not of necessity. The box inside version has a false premise. It says if God knows that you will do the thing in the actual world, then in every possible world you're doing it. Ooh, that doesn't seem very true. It's valid though, but with a false premise. So let's work on both of them in turn. The first one is invalid if you assume that you are free. Therefore, by the last premise, it's not necessary that you will do it. By reverse squiggle, it's possible that you won't do it. And so by drop diamond, in some possible world W, you don't do it. But in all possible worlds, if God knows that you're going to do it, then you'll do it. Therefore, in world W, if he knows that you will do it, then you won't. Then you'll do it, but you won't do it. Therefore, he doesn't know that you will do it. In fact, he probably knows that you will do it. Okay, then you drop this in the actual world too. In every world, if K then D. Therefore, in the actual world, if K then D. But K in the actual world, therefore D in the actual world. In the actual world, you're doing it. So what you end up with is two possible worlds. The actual world in which you do it, he knows that you will do it, and you're free. But what might have happened, in fact, had you chosen differently, you didn't do it, and he didn't know that you would do it. In fact, he probably knew that you wouldn't do it. Okay, K, actual world, true. In every world, if K, then D. Yeah. True. Every world. If every world has D, does every world have D? No. False. False implies anything is true. F, you look to the actual world. F is true, not true is false, so you get true premises, false conclusion, invalid. So if you take the crucial premise one way, it's invalid. If you do it the other way, it's valid, and it's so simple I won't even prove it. But you have a very false or doubtful premise that if in the actual world God knows what you're going to do, then in all worlds you do it. It could be that in some worlds you do it, in some worlds you don't, and God knows. In each world, his knowledge follows what you're going to do. So, not a good argument. It's kind of complicated, but I think it shows the power of modal logic in dealing with some pretty sophisticated arguments. Okay, so let's switch to informal fallacies, which we've been starting into the last couple of units. Recall that there's 18 different categories, bang and bang, and we'll have these little stories, and we'll ask what fallacy is committed. Now, how do you learn all of these? Well, one suggestion is go through the list, come up with a good example for each one, and then that will set it in your memory. So, for example, the last one, complex question, asking a question that assumes the truth of something false or doubtful. Good example is, are you still beating your wife? Okay, that assumes that you are beating your wife, maybe you're not. So, ad hominem, improperly attacking the person instead of the view. A good example of that, although you can come up with your own examples, is when the Nazis said that the Einstein's views on physics must be wrong because he was Jewish. Well, to show that his views are wrong, you got to attack the views. It doesn't suffice to attack the person. Okay, so go through these, and each one has a little two-letter code, which makes it a little easier. Go through these, come up with maybe your own example for it that will set it into your memory. Okay, so again, we're applying it to examples. Some of them are fairly clear-cut. Some of them you have to really think about, and some of them might be a little controversial, which ones apply. This is not as clear-cut as the more formal part of logic. Okay, so 11. There are scientific laws like the law of gravity. Where there are laws, there must be a lawgiver, someone who set up the law, and someone must have set up the scientific laws to govern our universe, and someone could only be God. The problem, I think, with this is ambiguity. The word law could mean two very different things. A political law, for example, the speed limit, requires a lawgiver, right? A lawgiver. Does a law of physics require a lawgiver? A law of physics is or a scientific law in general, is kind of an observed regularity of how things go. You know, you drop something and it breaks. Does that require a lawgiver? Not quite so clear. Political laws, yes, they require a lawgiver. Scientific laws, well, not quite so clear. So I think that there's an ambiguity here in the word law, from an observed regularity to something commanded by an authority. Okay, 12 is about law. The lawyer for the defense claims that there's a doubt that Smith committed the crime. But I ask you, are you going to let this horrible crime go unpunished because of this doubt? Look at the crime, see how horrible it was. So you see clearly that the crime was horrible and that Smith should be convicted. I think this is mainly beside the point. What the prosecutor has to prove beyond any reasonable doubt is that Smith did it. Smith committed the crime. If he proves that it's a horrible crime, well, that's nice, but that's not what you got to prove. You got to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Smith committed it. So even if he proves that it's horrible, that is beside the point to what you got to prove, namely that Smith did it beyond reasonable doubt. Perhaps a bit of emotional appeal also. But I think beside the point is probably the better choice. Logical, it'll sometimes accept more than one alternative. 13, free speech is for the common good, since unrestrained expression of opinion is in people's interest. This is circular. The premise says the same thing as the conclusion. So you're saying A is true, therefore A is true. 14, this is a shocking and stupid proposal. Its author must be either a dishonest bum or a complete idiot. Well, this is an appeal to emotion. You're just venting emotion against the proposal. You're not giving any reason for thinking it's a bad proposal. Perhaps ad hominem too, but I would think that appeal to emotion would be the better one. 15, Aristotle said that heavy objects fall faster than light ones, so it must be true. And people accepted that for thousands of years until Galileo produced an experiment. If you drop a paperclip and a little stone from the same height, which will hit the ground first? The same. Neglecting air resistance. Aristotle was wrong about this, but he was accepted for so many years because of his authority. This is appeal to authority. Wrong appeal to authority. Okay. 16, each of these dozen cookies or drinks by itself isn't harmful. One little one won't hurt, hence having these dozen cookies or drinks isn't harmful. This is the part, whole fallacy. Each one isn't harmful, therefore the whole group of like 20 cookies is not harmful. Well, very well might be the part whole fallacy. 17 is a political one. Before Barack Obama became the Democratic candidate for the U.S. president, he ran in a series of primary elections. He noted that he played basketball before the Iowa primary and then won, and he neglected to play before the New Hampshire primary and he lost. He concluded in jest, at that point, I was certain that I had to play on every primary. He's joking, of course. This is a post hoc, ergo propter hoc. I played basketball and won the primary. I didn't play basketball, therefore I won because I played basketball. And next one, I didn't play basketball and I lost, therefore I lost because I didn't play basketball. Post hoc, ergo propter hoc fallacy. It might just happen to have gone together. And again, this is a joke. I'm not attacking him. This is the subject of many jokes, actually. The post hoc, ergo propter hoc. 18, only men are rational animals. What does that mean? All rational animals are men. Men in the broad sense of human beings, male or female. No woman is a man, but not in the sense of human beings, because women are human beings, but no woman is a man in the sense of male human beings. Therefore, no woman is a rational animal. Remember the star test, okay? You star distributed terms in the premises and undistributed in the conclusion. And to be valid, you have to have every capital starred exactly once, which it is. And there's exactly one right-hand star. And so it is valid. A little sloppy, but there you go. So it's valid, but the problem is the ambiguity. Men can be taken in terms of members of Homo sapiens, of whatever gender, and you need to take it that way to make the first premise true. Or it can be taken in the gender sense. A man is a male member of Homo sapiens, or maybe a male adult. And you need that one for the second premise to be true. But you can't just shift the meaning throughout. That's called the fallacy of ambiguity. Yeah, I'm right because you flunk if you disagree with me. That's appeal to force. Okay. 20. The discriminating backpacker prefers South Glacier tints. Now, none of our categories fit really precisely. If you have a snob appeal fallacy, that would fit pretty nicely. How many fallacies are there? Lots and lots. I just picked 18 of the more popular ones. So you've got to kind of twist a little bit. Perhaps it's appeal to authority. Maybe you're appealing to this authority group called Discriminating Backpackers, and they all prefer South Glacier tints. Well, backpackers tend to be very much in disagreement about what tints are the best, and then you probably don't have a consensus of such authorities. Maybe appeal to emotion. Maybe discriminating backpacker is just kind of an emotionally positive term, perhaps false stereotype. They all agree. No, probably not. Snob appeal would be the best, but these kind of apply. Besides that, South Glacier is meant to be funny. Why is that funny? In the Northern Hemisphere, you wouldn't call your companies North Glacier or South Glacier, like North Face, okay? The north side of the mountain in the Northern Hemisphere is the most fierce in terms of snow and ice and so forth. The south side gets more of the sunlight and so is more gentle. So if you want to name your company for the fierce side, it's North Face. There you go. Okay, 21. This kind of argument was common during the Vietnam War. Those who opposed the war were obviously wrong. They were just a bunch of cowardly homosexual communists. Oh, too bad you didn't live during the Vietnam War. You would hear just all kinds of nonsense. First of all, it's ad hominem. You're attacking the person, and you've got to attack the issue, the war, if you're going to conclude that they were wrong. There's something of an appeal to emotion. Also, you're using a lot of very derogatory words, and there's also a bit of false stereotype. Everyone who disagreed were cowardly homosexual communists. Well, some of them were very brave war heroes from previous wars that thought that this was a foolish war to fight in. So all kinds of things. I think the political arena encourages the blossoming of these really, really stupid fallacies. So, 22, we should legalize gambling in our state because it would bring in new tax revenue, encourage tourists to come and spend money here, and cost nothing, just the passing of a new law. This is pro-con. These are benefits, but you got to look at the other side too before you make a judgment. You have to say, would there be negative things, aspects of legalizing gambling? And you'd have to look at both sides in a pro-con argument. 23, do you want to be a good little boy and go to bed? This is a complex question. I used to use this against my younger nephew, Keith. And, if a little kid, you can just overwhelm them with fallacies. Now, if he would grow up, he would say, yes, I do want to go to be a good little boy. No, I don't want to go to bed. Your question assumes that good little boys go to bed. Okay, this is kind of like, are you still beating your wife? 24, this man is probably a communist. After all, nothing in the files disproves his communist connection. You can't prove he isn't communist, therefore he probably is. This is the appeal to ignorance. And this was particularly used by Joseph McCarthy, who was a Republican senator from Wisconsin in the 1940s and 1950s. And he accused all kinds of people of being communists on this kind of argument. You can't prove it isn't communist, therefore it probably is. Historical note, my first cousin, John Gronowski, ran against him in 1952 as a Democrat, Unfortunately, though, he lost. But he later became Postmaster General, so he rose in, under Kennedy, he rose in importance. And then 25, the last one we'll do today. People who read Fortune magazine make a lot of money. So if I subscribe to Fortune, then I too will make a lot of money. Well, this is post hoc, ergo propter hoc. Maybe they subscribe to Fortune because they already have money. It isn't that subscribing makes them rich, but being rich, makes them want to know how to invest their money and so forth. So this would be post hoc, ergo propter hoc. These people read Fortune, they make a lot of money. Therefore, they make a lot of money because they read Fortune. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but you need more of an argument for that. Therefore, if you subscribe, then you will make a lot of money. Post hoc, ergo propter hoc. Okay, so that's enough for this unit. Our next unit, we will finish the fallacies. I'd like you to work out all the fallacies 26 to 50 for next time, and then also do the logic holoset if you can. It's kind of tricky.